Okay, I think we are live now. So welcome everyone and good afternoon. Welcome to our last Pirate Parents Live in the Umbrella Family series. My name is Carter Fenwick. I am the Associate Director of Parent and Family Programs. Like I've mentioned all month long, March is National Umbrella Month, so we decided to hold 4 Pirate Parents Lives on the theme of becoming umbrella families. We've all heard of helicopter parents or bulldozer parents or snowplow parents, but at ECU, we really encourage our families to be umbrella families. So an umbrella family is one where a parent, guardian, older sibling, really any family member stands next to their student, not in front, not behind, but next to them, holding the umbrella for them. That way their students' hands are free to experience life at ECU, do their work, make mistakes, learn, and grow. So our mission in parent and family programs is to equip parents and family members with their umbrella, the tools and resources needed to support their students. If you are watching the live version, you can submit questions into the comments section. We have some colleagues there who will answer them for you. If you are watching the archived version, you can still put questions into the comment section. My office will get that notification and then we will answer your question there. So like I mentioned, this is our last Pirate Parents Live in this series, and today we are talking about living off campus. With me is Aaron Lucier, the Director of Housing Operations here at ECU. Aaron, is there anything else you'd like to add to that introduction?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working with both on-campus housing and off-campus housing. On-campus housing for the last 25 years at ECU, and on-campus housing for the last about 5 years. So I have a lot of experience. I hope I can impart a little bit about it to the families online with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And so to kind of kick us off, I wanted to talk about before we talk about off-campus living, I want to talk a little bit about on-campus living, which seems counterproductive. But here at ECU, freshmen and incoming first-time students are required to live on campus. So we've received a few questions about, yes, today we're talking about living off campus, but is it even possible for students to live, remain living on campus their sophomore, junior, senior years?
Yeah, I'm going to cover a few things about that. The live-on requirement is for first-year students, so that does mean that we have a predominantly first-year housing system. But that does not mean, but we've been very lucky at East Carolina to have a sort of natural draw to returners. And therefore that natural draw means that we're not having a lottery for upperclassmen, and we're not forcing, quote, upperclassmen to live with us. So it's a pretty natural draw. So there is spaces for students that lived with us any amount of time last year, this past academic year, or even in the past, because I'll talk about one good reason in a moment. But to live with us on campus. So you just contact us. The information's on our website, but also you can just contact us at housing@ecu.edu if you have any questions about that. But there is, if your student says, no, there's no place for me, and you guys are excited about them being back on campus, there is a place for them on campus if they want. And we'd be excited to have them. The time is literally right now is when we're getting those applications. So.
Great. Yes, like Aaron said, there is place for your student on campus if you would like them to stay here. So now transitioning to living off campus, which is why we're here. Living off campus and students transitioning to that off campus environment can be overwhelming, and there are a lot of moving parts. So let's start with what is even available to students in Greenville. What does that look like?
There is a range of things available, and I think it talks to the very, very good part of that question you put in there, that there's lots of different things and it can seem overwhelming. It is matching up what your student is ready for with what is available in the market. And let's start with the most common. There is some student focused. It's not allowed to be student exclusive because fair housing standards, but it's student focused apartment communities that have a leasing setup, and that is one of the ones you might be hearing about from your students. So they have names connected to the campus. They call themselves student housing, even though they're not directly affiliated with the university. But they are student focused housing. And that generally means that it is an individual lease for an individual bedroom. Therefore, your student is renting a bedroom in an apartment, be it a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom apartment, but they are leasing 1 bedroom. And the good thing about those is they are leasing 1 bedroom. So if their roommate drops out or the roommate isn't, they don't have to worry about filling those other spaces. And therefore, and also if their roommate drops out, they're not responsible for paying for those spaces. Those apartments usually have either utilities included or utility allotment, namely they have a budgeted utility amount. Therefore, they're not dealing with utilities. They're not dealing with having credit for getting utilities. They are usually include internet, so they're not fighting for that. So it is kind of as close to the on-campus package of paying one price and getting a lease in a room kind of environment that they have. So it's often good for transition. And now you're often paying a little bit for that convenience. So since it's all packaged together, you're paying a little bit more for that, but that is one of the options. One of the other options are often is the second year for students is to move into Greek housing. So if they are a member of a social Greek organization, they may have an opportunity to live in one of the Greek houses. And some of them do have housing, and that's a separate process. The other thing in the community is just a standard apartment, namely an apartment that has 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, where it is not is quite student focused. It might still be close to the campus, whatever else, but utilities are not included. So the students need to contract for utilities independently. They need to, if they have a roommate and that roommate, they're signing a lease together, therefore they have a tied financial responsibility. So if it's a 2-bedroom apartment and Mike and Bob are living in the same apartment, but midsummer Bob decides to leave, what's Mike's responsibility for that? And those are questions you need to have. So that's more the traditional apartment model. You add to that there's also houses nearby. So it might be in a house or an apartment. So it can be a house or literally in a house or an apartment. So that's kind of the flavors out there. There is standard houses and apartments. There is student focused housing and apartments. And then there's Greek housing out there as well.
A lot to take in, especially for a student's first time
Yes.
moving off campus. Are there any, is there a website or any research online that students can do to go through these and kind of weigh their options?
Yeah, there isn't. It was last updated in 2019, but it's still very poignant. On the off-campus information website that offcampus.ecu.edu, there is information about, there's a off-campus living sort of apartment handbook, and that has a lot of that information. Also, you can do a little Google research on it. It's readily available. There's a lot of information from other schools about it. But there is some commonalities, and I can talk about that a little bit, and probably it would be helpful to do that. And hopefully I'm not going to be getting ahead of you here. But one of the most common things that you really need to do in any one of these options is to read the lease. Know what you're getting and know what you're not getting. Know what you're responsible for. Know when, a lot of times students think, that they can, we've actually had this happen where students have visited multiple apartment complexes and applied for housing and think that they only have applied for something. They've actually signed leases at multiple complexes. Yeah, not good. So before your student is out there signing anything, make sure that they're reading and understanding it. Make sure that there's commitments to any of these. Make sure that these commitments are not tied to ECU anymore. They're not living on campus housing. So therefore, if they do not attend ECU this fall, like they're not sure if they're going to be here this fall or spring even, know that they are probably signing a 11.5-month lease that is going to obligate them to be here no matter what their ECU enrollment is, because it's no longer tied to ECU. Now, Greek housing is, but there might be some penalties for that. But in some cases, literally, it has nothing to do with ECU in terms of that regard. And therefore, if they're no longer attending ECU, they might be living in Greenville still because they have an apartment, or they're looking for somebody to sublet it or sublease it from them. And so that's important to do that and realize that as soon as they move off campus, that lease has nothing to do with the relationship with the university. And that can be a bit of a challenge. But read the lease. So read the Greek housing lease, read the apartment lease, the student-focused apartment community lease, read it, and understand what you're getting and what you're not getting. A few surprises out there that while it doesn't cost anything to move on campus, moving from unit to unit off campus can have fees and costs. You might be responsible for, you might be saying, I got all my utilities, but it might be a utility budget. And therefore, if you go over, you and your roommates who may not be friends or may not even know very well might be responsible for that overage. Pets might have significant costs. Is parking included? Are pets even allowed? What kind of pets? What's included, what's not included? Is there bandwidth restrictions? Is there utility overages? Is there a parking fee in addition to your normal fee? I mean, all those things are going to be in the lease, and you need to know that going into it.
Yeah, that I personally have some horror stories from moving apartments and my time at ECU, but I have never heard of that, a student signing multiple leases without knowing. So great advice. So we've talked about a few things so far about what's available and some advice, but when do students need to start looking? If they are living on campus their first year, freshman year, they're there for fall and spring, do students need to start researching in the fall and the spring over Christmas break? What is recommended?
It really depends on what they're looking for. If they're looking for, they say they've got to live in this one community, and this is the one they got to live in. I would say you're going to be doing that. You might even be doing that as early as October and November, the year before the fall. So basically, you arrive to school, you might be looking at signing up. If it's a very desirable unit type at a very desirable apartment complex, you might be looking very early. But if you have some flexibility and you're not sure, I assure you, those leasing teams at any of those complexes or that landlord is interested in having you sign that document. If you're not sure, don't sign it, because it is a financial and a legal commitment. But also know that they're going to make you think that the deal that they are offering you today will never exist ever again anywhere ever else in the world. And that might be true in some few cases. That might be, they might have very few of that unit type, and it really might be gone tomorrow. But I can assure you, we have an abundance of housing in our Greenville community here that if they don't get exactly what they want and they're not sure that day, it's better to walk out of the room and be a little disappointed and maybe go somewhere else than be signed up for something that they have a financial commitment to that they might not need or want. Our apartment communities are very upfront about that. They want you to sign a lease. They're going to maybe even offer you a deal to sign a lease today. But know that when you sign that lease, you need to be doing it with your mind in the game. And I encourage parents and family and students to have those conversations together. Hey, we're not signing anything until we all agree on it. We are not signing, whatever that is. Go in with a budget and a plan and stick with it. Because the cost differences in between some of the setups are significant. People always ask me, is it cheaper to live on campus or off? It depends where you're living when you move off, and it depends when you're living when you lived on. And so it really depends on your budget and what you're looking to do.
Yeah, you mentioned that some students start signing leases in October if they moved on campus in August, which is crazy to me. But
Yeah.
again, some personal advice from just some personal experiences. Another reason to wait is your student may be very excited about those new friendships that they've made, which is wonderful, but those friendships can change over the first year of college. That roommate that they have, their freshman year in the dorm room may change and may be very different. So that is another reason maybe to be a little bit more cautious and take some time when signing a lease early.
And I share that often with families. I think it's really important to get your first round of grades too. So waiting till January or February, get your first round of grades. Feel how you feel about ECU after your first full semester before you're making a commitment for next fall. Get that first round of grades before you know what kind of housing you might want to be in, because that can impact your grades. It can impact all kinds of things. You might say, my second semester, I decided I wanted to be something that I've changed majors, and I'm changed majors to something that is not at ECU's one of its strong points, and therefore I'm transferring next fall. But I got this lease at the apartment complex X. What am I supposed to do with that? Well, you're going to have to do something with this. So you got to, So I often encourage people to really wait till January, February to really make that commitment. Now, there's probably some apartment manager out there probably going, what are you talking about, Aaron? But really get your grades first. But if you really want to be in what the IT property that year, whatever that property might be, or the unit type at that property that they only have a few of, or you want that view, or you want that house that your friends had last year, you might have to sign in October or November or December, but know what you're doing when you do it.
Yes. So the next question that I kind of had on my list for us to talk about, and you've touched base on it a little bit, is cost. Some people really think it's more affordable to live on campus, or even off campus. My family included thought it was cheaper to live off campus than on campus. And so would you mind, elaborating on that a little bit more of just the cost differences and that kind of thing?
Cost is often related to convenience. So like I said, those apartment complexes that are in the newest, that are within walking distance of campus, so you don't have to consider bus travel or commuting by car, that you say you don't want to deal with roommates, so you want a single 1-bedroom apartment, that is going to be a very high premium. And that you're going to be paying for all those things. It doesn't mean that you can't, and it doesn't mean that it's, like I said, it all depends on where that is and when you sign for it and what you got as your deal for the unit that is going to say, is it cheaper to live on or off? Certainly we think that on-campus housing is different, so we don't like to compare the price, but from a budgeting perspective, you can certainly spend less than on campus and you can spend more. It all depends where you're going to land up. But it also goes to unit type. So if you're in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, that's gonna change the cost. If how far you are from campus. So if you're gonna have to get on a bus, or could you walk to campus, it's gonna change. When was the building built and when was it last renovated is gonna change the price. Does it include utilities, or does it have a utility allowance? Does it include pets? Does it include parking? All those things will factor into the cost of that. If it's a house that you have to mow your own lawn, that might have, so if you decide to move to a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment that is distant from campus, that hasn't been renovated in 15 years, you can save money. I can assure you that you're going to manage your own utilities, and you're going to have to set some money aside and get your own cable and make all those own decisions. You can save money moving off campus. But you're going to have to be budgeting, and you're going to have to be thinking about it. And you're going to be having to manage your own utility money, and you're going to have to be signing your own lease, and maybe even mowing your own lawn or whatever else, and making those decisions. And that's going to be a big transition for a student. And maybe not that first transition. That might be a later transition where senior year, you decide, I can really try as far into what I would be living after graduation and try that out. But that might not be your first place. One of the other things about cost you need to factor in is food. I will tell you, students, and your parents are going to be shocked. You're going to fall out of your chairs when you hear this, is students historically underestimate the cost and value of food. It's the truth. They don't know how much food costs. I hear from students all the time that they're going to live on $50 a week. I hope they don't like protein, and I hope they don't like eating out, because $50 a week, you can live on that. Don't get me wrong, you can, but that's not going to be a lot of meals out or healthy options or getting a lot, that's not steak. Welcome to Ramen Town. But you get what I'm saying. $50 a week is going to be a tough food budget. One of the things I do encourage you to consider is there is off-campus, there is meal plans designed for off-campus students. And that might be that transition year I was talking about, that, that first year off campus where the student might be exploring cooking and managing their own food budget, might get a meal plan to help bridge that year, or might be they're just not into cooking, and therefore versus eating out all the time, versus that meal plan might offer some discount. So they are called the gold plans, and campus on the campus dining website. Now, that's not me selling them. That's saying that's just one option, particularly for those students really close to campus. They might even consider, like if they are in walking distance to campus, of keeping a purple plan, which is our residential plans, which is the all access to the dining hall, because food service can be very expensive, but also can be very challenging for students to eat healthy, to have it ready all the time, to keep it balanced, to not just go with junk food and pizza all the time, all those things. And I really encourage people to consider that, because that's one of the things that people really don't think about from the financial perspective, is the cost of food, but is the student ready to be cooking all the time? Because, at $50 a week, you're going to be cooking a lot.
Another thing to discuss when we're talking about cost is a parking pass. Like
Yeah.
you have mentioned, some of the apartment complexes and areas of living have bus routes that go to it, which is included in your student fees and tuition.
We do have a great transit system at ECU, so that is a big bonus. But some of the apartment complexes charge for parking separate from their lease. And also the student wants to drive to campus. That means they're going to have to set some money aside for a commuter permit, or for money for the garage.
Yes, and there is I believe it's on the transit website, transit.ecu.edu. I think there's a list of those bus routes that go to different apartment complexes, correct?
Yep, and a time schedule that we're operating close to normal schedule right now. So if they look at it, they can get an idea what it would be. But most of the apartment complexes, if you're talking to that apartment community, can tell you exactly how the transit system runs for that community and how often it runs. And that's information they'll be happy to provide. Because part of your rent is paying for that bus to go out to that complex. Some of your fees are, but and also for that complex is some of your rent is too.
Yes, because the apartment complex pays to have ECU transit run there, which when I lived in an apartment complex, the transit system did come to that apartment complex, and honestly, I loved it. I did not have to pay for a parking pass because of that bus route. And so it is also another cost and just another factor to consider.
Yeah, car maintenance, fuel, you got to consider all those things. And when you're thinking about the budget, you need to start thinking about all these pieces.
So that's a lot of the the ins and outs of those small things that students and even families may not know or even think about. But something that has been, or a question that has been asked prior to this Facebook Live and some of the areas of concern that parents and families or even students may have about moving off campus is some may be concerned about losing that campus and that ECU connection. So what are some ways that the university works to keep those students living off campus connected to the university?
Well, that's part of that choosing the environment you're in. Choosing to be farther away from the campus saves you money, but it also means that you might be riding in a bus for 15 minutes to get back to campus. And think about what that means for clubs and organizations that you might be involved with. Think about what that might mean for just coming back for an evening activity or something like that. So that's one thing to think about as a family and when you're budgeting. But also we offer programs, some programs during the daytime, we offer some programs during the nighttime, in a balance about that, so the students can connect, at different times of the day, because there's things happening, in a normal year on the mall, and so there's evening activities and there's day activities, and so you can come back and you might have some time between classes, and instead of getting on the bus, you might want to stay on campus for that hour between classes. That might mean you get the meal plan, or that might mean that you visit one of the student center or the library, and you experience the campus, or you hang out on campus. I would say it's little, when you move off campus, it's more up to the student to maintain that connection. And therefore they need to be a little bit more thoughtful about it, and particularly if they're a little bit more distant from campus. And part of that is making decisions about what you do with your time between classes. Do you run home and spend more time on the bus, or do you stay on campus for a few hours every day, running over to the library, maybe studying over there, because the library's got some great study rooms and study spaces, or the new student center, or your favorite little nook and over in the right place, where you just sit down with friends and have lunch, and you wait out your hour between classes, but get a meal and connect and be on campus and have that time. So what the university does, it has spaces, the student center, it's got programming that sometimes all different times of the day, but at some point or another becomes the student's responsibility to check in with the university and make that effort to come back for things that are important to you. So if you're, and that's the challenge also for class too, is when you're sitting there and you're thinking about, I got a 10-minute bus ride and I got it every day and it's both ways. Is that something you're ready to do to save a little money? Or do you want to be within walking distance of campus, and are you willing to pay the money to be there? That's a decision and a discussion item you need to have as a family and with the student.
There are so many factors that go into living off campus. Like you said, the lease, the budgeting, what area of Greenville, and I mean, so many things to consider. But as we wrap this up, what are your final few pieces of advice? We've covered a lot, but those final few pieces of advice when moving off campus.
First, read the lease. And then if that doesn't work, read the lease. And if that doesn't work, read the lease. So whatever you're going, read the lease, read the lease, read the lease. Know what you're in for, and it's going to impact a lot of different things. It's going to impact the budget. It's going to impact expectations. It's going to impact a lot of different things, but read the lease. The other things are just have a candid conversation about what the expectation is going to be. If I live here, how much time are you going to be on the road? What's my class schedule look like? What's my day going to look like? And does that include a meal plan? Does that include a lot of time on campus? Does that include a car? Does that include bus time? Whatever it does, just have a practical thought process about what does living here mean? And it might impact how you schedule classes. It might impact, how you get to and fro and all those things. So have a candid conversation. Are you ready to live this far to save the money to do these other things? Or are we doing something else, or making other decisions? And then, and then the last part is really go in with your eyes open. Don't just go to the first complex that you heard about and sign up. Visit several places, talk about options, maybe explore different things. And as your time at ECU goes on, explore more things. So you might say, I really want to be in a student-focused complex, but next year, just don't sign your lease back up unless you like living there and you're really like, this is the place I want to be. You don't need to sign up right away. And just, they might, think about where you want to be on that, and maybe start making that transition in junior and senior year to a little bit less student-focused housing complex. If you want to, that might be closer to a more traditional off-campus housing experience. And so, think about where you are as a student and as a family, and have those conversations. And it might be, hey, we're going to stay structured, and we're going to stay, somebody's covering your utilities. You're not good with bills. That might be a decision you might be doing, because your student might be not sitting in the dark otherwise. And so you're going to have to talk about budgeting, because most apartment complexes still, no matter what, charge by the month. And therefore, when they get that, they get a financial aid refund, it means putting some money away for those future rent months. So those are just conversations you need to have.
Thank you so much, Aaron. We covered a lot, so I hope you all who are joining us live have gotten a lot out of this.
All right, I'm a bit of a fire hose with it.
I mean, the topic itself is a fire hose, but I mean, I think this is a really great conversation, and some of the links we mentioned, I will make sure and put them into the comments section, like the off-campus housing website, the commuter meal plans, if anyone's interested in the transit buses running off campus. So I will make sure and put those into the comments section. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Aaron. And like I said, this was our last Pirate Parents Live in the Umbrella Family series. If you have any additional questions, like I said, you can put them in the comment section, or you can send them to parents@ecu.edu and we will get you where you need to go. But other than that, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.